guys, welcome back to Container Crops, the Scaredy Cat Gardener. It's a beautiful day here in Zone 7B. I am actually getting ready to go on my daily walk, but I thought I'd stop and take a chat with you all about preparing for our fall gardens. I've got a little short checklist for you all, things you need to start doing now to make sure that you have a successful garden and to start preparing your garden, whether you're preparing it for a fall garden or preparing it for the fall going into winter for your next spring. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Show off your fantasy reality, whoa, that's yours, but I'll keep doing mine. You'll be living your good life, catch a glimpse from the outside all the time.
Okay guys, we are back, and before we get started, take a second and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss anything. If you are new, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. Thank you both for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you all. I'd like to thank all of my channel members as well for your loyal, faithful support. Okay, let's not forget Facebook, my Facebook group. It's for you guys. I want to see what you're planting, what you're harvesting. You can post over there anytime you like, and let's all share in our successes. And if you have questions, that's a good place to get them answered too. And you can always find me on IG, Scaredy Cat Gardener. Okay, without further ado, our checklist. Okay, we are pretty much in the middle of summer, but we are headed towards fall. Now is the time to start getting our fall gardens ready. Whatever it is you may want to plant, you should have already kind of decided that. But the first thing you need to do with your existing garden is walk around and take note. If you can't take a mental note, take a pencil and paper and write a physical note out. What is currently going on in your garden? What went on in your garden this summer? Did you have a section of your garden that maybe some plant got disease? Why did it get disease? Is there some blight in your garden? Did you have some plants planted in a place that ended up being pretty shady and it wasn't so successful? Did you have too much sun in an area? You want to notice these things now, and this is in preparation for your next year's spring garden. Certainly, if you had a container or a raised bed or an area of your garden that the plants just got all kind of disease and they just didn't make it, you don't want to go back in and plant the same thing in that spot. And come spring after winter time, you may not remember exactly what happened in that spot. So take notes. If you need to make a diagram, make a diagram. These are the things you want to do now so that you can have a successful garden in the spring next year, and even a successful garden in the fall, because some plants just don't work when planted behind others. So you need to figure out what you're going to plant and make sure that you can plant them behind whatever maybe you had in that plant. If it had a disease or if it was in a shady spot, maybe that's a good spot now for brassicas or something like that. So get your note, get your paper and your pen out and make some notes about what's happening in your garden. Okay, now something else you want to do is look around your yard, look around your garden area. Do you have some old pile of leaves, or do you have some twigs and some branches that you said, you know what, I'll get to it? Now's the time to get to it. Get it together, clean it up, make it look nice. Throw out any diseased plants that you may have or anything like that. All those leaves and twigs and things like that, I mean, as long as they're not huge branches, they can pretty much go in your compost pile if you have a compost pile. If you're like me, I don't have a compost pile because I have a very, very small garden and a small garden area. So I use compost. But for me, it's time for me to clean those out, get rid of them, and do whatever I'm going to do with them. Some things, if I'm collecting leaves, I can put them back down in my containers, but I don't have a compost bin. But be sure, if you are putting these things in your compost bin, that they are not diseased or anything like that. You don't want to put any plants that had disease or anything like that in your compost bin, because then you're putting disease in your compost bin. So make sure that the things that you're putting in your compost bin are okay for your compost bin. Next on my checklist, and guys, this is my checklist. There are probably a ton of other things that you might need to incorporate into this list, or that you might think of. And by the way, leave me some comments. Add to the list. Let me know what's on your checklist of to-do things, so that other people, when they read the comments, if I'm not mentioning something, they can see something that you suggest, and we can all make sure we have a really good, complete list. So next on my checklist, just like I think it was typically daylight savings time, which is not going to be any longer, but we had daylight savings time in the spring, and then we changed our clocks back at the fall again. And during those times, it was always a good time to check your batteries in your smoke detectors. Well, I always feel like coming up on the end of summer or middle of summer, when you're doing the things for your fall garden, that's kind of mid-year, and it's a good time to clean and sanitize all your tools. Now, I typically will clean my tools periodically throughout each season, and especially if I'm using something and I had a bad plant, a diseased plant or something like that, I will clean off my tools. But as a general rule, around this time, I just kind of drag all my tools out. I make sure they're clean. If you have a tool that needs sharpening, this is a good time to sharpen it. Make sure you're rubbing these tools down with some alcohol or peroxide or whatever sanitizer you may be using. Get them sanitized, get them shined up, get them dried up, so that you'll be ready to go into the fall. Okay, now I typically put mulch in my containers, but if you're not someone that uses mulch, now is a good time to put maybe about 2 or 3 inches, 2 or 3 inch layer of compost over everything. It's going to help prevent disease going forward, and it will also help retain moisture. Now, like I said, I typically use mulch on my pots, and anything that I'm not growing in. I do have a fall garden, and I do normally utilize just about all of my pots going into the fall. So I don't really do this until dead of winter, but once my fall garden is over, I will put mulch and I will put amendments in all of my pots to let it sit throughout the winter in preparation for spring. So now is a good time to get that compost on top of all of your beds. Okay, if you are not having a fall garden, or if you're in an area that you can't have a fall garden, now after your summer garden ends, a good thing to do is put cover crops. I couldn't think of it. Put cover crops over everything. What that does is that will provide a lot of nutrients going into the spring for your next year's garden. Some cover crops are good down to 0, and some go all the way down, like rye. Winter rye goes all the way down to like 30 below Fahrenheit. So even if you're in a very, very cold climate, you might want to use cover crops along all of your beds to provide nutrients. Now, if you choose to use cover crops to provide the most nutrients, what you want to do is you're going to have to cut them back down, but then you're going to leave everything you cut in your garden, in your beds. You want to cut them down. Once they flower, you can leave them there for a minute to see the beautiful flowers, but make sure you cut them before they seed. That is the crucial time. You want them to flower, but before they seed. That's when they're going to provide the most nutrients, not only on the top, but the roots have the most nutrients at that time too. So make sure you don't leave them there and they go to seed. Make sure that you cut them down. Now, when you cut them, just cut them and leave everything there. You want that goodness and nutrients to stay into your garden. Let me see some good cover crops include, let me see, winter rye, clover, crimson clover, white clover, oats. What else? Let me see, barley, buckwheat. I think barley, yeah, barley and buckwheat. All of those are good cover crops. And I know we always are picking clover out of our gardens. It's like we don't want the clover, but if you're using it as a cover crop, that's perfect. And that's the time that you do want the clover in there. So just keep that in mind. That's a good thing to do, those cover crops. Okay, and last but not least on my list, if you've planted some young trees, you might want to make sure you stake them now going into the winter months so that they can sustain any harsh winds that may come, any harsh rains that may come, any ice or anything like that. So make sure you've protected your young trees. You might want to get breathable tree wraps to cover them up just in case so that they can survive throughout the winter. These are things that you want to do now to ensure that your trees stay healthy throughout the entire fall and winter. Right now, our weather is perfect for that. And you don't have to wait until winter comes and it's like, oh my God, I got a heavy rain or heavy wind. I need to, what about my trees? My tree is blowing, it's so tiny. Stake it now and go ahead now while the weather is not cold and people really aren't thinking about it and the prices are probably stabilized for now, and get you a few tree wraps if you have some young trees that you just planted. Okay, guys, that's going to do it for today. Again, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me in my neighborhood. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and share it out. Share it out. Let everybody you know in the gardening community, and even if they're just thinking about gardening, some of the things that they can do right now to make sure going into the fall and the winter that their garden is protected, they'll have a great harvest going forward, and they can enjoy some successful crops as well. Okay, guys, again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. And remember, anywhere you can sit a pot, you can grow a plant. And I'll see you on the trail.
You'll be living your good life, catch a glimpse from the outside all the time.